Good morning, viewers. You are watching Defense Communique. In public, President Vladimir Putin of Russia says his country's growing friendship with China is unshakable, a strategic military and economic collaboration that has entered a golden era. But in the corridors of Lubyanka, the headquarters of Russia's domestic security agency, known as the FSB, a secretive intelligence unit refers to the Chinese as the enemy. A leaked internal document from Russia's powerful Federal Security Service FSB reveals growing distrust toward China, with the agency branding Beijing as the enemy in an 8-page planning document. The document, reportedly authored by a previously undisclosed FSB unit, has warned that China poses a serious and expanding threat to Russian national security. China is increasingly trying to recruit Russian scientists and intelligence officers, and Beijing is aggressively targeting dissatisfied individuals with access to sensitive military and technological information. FSB officers claim that Chinese agents are actively monitoring Russian military operations in Ukraine. Their aim is to analyze Western-supplied weapons and learn modern warfare techniques. Chinese intelligence conducts espionage in the Arctic using mining companies and university research centers as cover, the report alleges, raising alarms over Beijing's dual-use civilian infrastructure and scientific engagement. The document also expresses concern that China could be laying the groundwork to eventually challenge Russian territorial claims, particularly in sparsely populated and strategically significant regions near their shared border. Strikingly, just 3 days before Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, the FSB launched a new counterintelligence program titled Entente 4, a name seen as a pointed irony given Moscow's public embrace of Beijing. The report noted that with most of Russia's espionage resources focused on Ukraine, the FSB feared China might take advantage of the shift. The timing was likely not accidental. Since 2022, the FSB says it has documented a sharp increase in Chinese efforts to infiltrate Russian institutions. In response, Russian officers were directed to hold face-to-face meetings with Russian citizens cooperating closely with China. They were instructed to eliminate the threat and prevent the transfer of critical information, the document states, adding that Beijing seeks to exploit Russia and gain access to advanced scientific research. The report further reveals a climate of deep mutual suspicion between the two powers. Chinese intelligence reportedly monitors returning operatives using polygraph tests and controls over 20,000 Russian students currently in China. The FSB warns that Chinese agents often seek out Russians married to Chinese citizens for potential recruitment. The goal is to penetrate Russia's state institutions through trusted, vulnerable personal connections. Though Russia and China have publicly declared a no-limits partnership, the FSB document reveals a behind-the-scenes intelligence struggle. It describes a tense and dynamically developing intelligence battle in the shadows between the two outwardly friendly nations. While the document is undated, clues suggest, as per the news report, it was likely drafted in late 2023 or early 2024, underscoring the ongoing strain in bilateral ties despite surface-level cooperation. Mr. Putin has courted Mr. Xi for years, in more than 40 personal meetings, and has cemented a far deeper partnership with China since invading Ukraine. The two countries have a natural economic synergy, with Russia being one of the world's largest energy producers and China the world's largest energy consumer. Some members of the Trump administration believe that, through outreach to Mr. Putin, Washington can begin to peel Russia away from China and avoid what Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called two nuclear powers aligned against the United States. "I am going to have to unite them, and I think I can do that," President Trump said shortly before his election in November. China has world-class scientists, but its military has not fought a war since a month-long conflict with Vietnam in 1979. The result is anxiety in China about how its military would perform against Western weapons in a conflict over Taiwan or the South China Sea. Chinese intelligence officials are eager to understand Russia's fight against an army backed by the West. Of particular interest to Beijing is information about combat methods using drones, modernization of their software and methods for countering new types of Western weapons, the FSB document says, adding that Beijing believes the war in Ukraine will become drawn out. The conflict has revolutionized warfare technology and tactics. China has long lagged behind Russia in its aviation expertise, and the document says that Beijing has made that a priority target. China is targeting military pilots and researchers in aerohydrodynamics, control systems and aeroelasticity. Also being sought out, according to the document, are Russian specialists who worked on the discontinued Ekranoplan, a hovercraft-type warship first deployed by the Soviet Union. Priority recruitment is given to former employees of aircraft factories and research institutes, as well as current employees who are dissatisfied with the closure of the Ekranoplan development program by the Russian Ministry of Defense or who are experiencing financial difficulties, the report says. The FSB memo also hints at Chinese interest in the Wagner mercenary group, a Russia-backed paramilitary group that propped up governments in Africa for years and fought alongside Russian troops in Ukraine. The Chinese plan to use the experience of Wagner fighters in their own armed forces and private military companies operating in the countries of Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Russia has long feared encroachment by China along their shared 2,615-mile border. And Chinese nationalists for years have taken issue with 19th-century treaties in which Russia annexed large portions of land, including modern-day Vladivostok. That issue is now of key concern, with Russia weakened by the war and economic sanctions and less able than ever to push back against Beijing. The FSB report raises concerns that some academics in China have been promoting territorial claims against Russia. China is searching for traces of ancient Chinese peoples in the Russian Far East, possibly to influence local opinion that is favorable to Chinese claims. In 2023, China published an official map that included historical Chinese names for cities and areas within Russia. The FSB ordered officers to expose such revanchist activities, as well as attempts by China to use Russian scientists and archival funds for research aimed at attaching a historical affiliation to borderlands. The FSB asserts that Chinese spies are active in the Arctic as well. The report says Chinese intelligence is trying to obtain information about Russia's development of the Arctic, using institutions of higher education and mining companies in particular. But despite all of these vulnerabilities, the FSB report makes clear that jeopardizing the support of China would be worse. The document squarely warns officers that they must receive approval from the highest echelons of the Russian security establishment before taking any sensitive action at all. Thanks for watching Defense Communique.